Good evening, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the south. A terrifying armed robbery as a gun is held to a woman's head in Sussex. Did the gang responsible carry out other violent crimes?
Spared from jail, the boy racers who are just 19 who caused this horror crash when one of them lost control.
Time Lords and theatre stars. Today's actors come together to mark 60 years of youth theatre and inspire a new generation.
And caught out and not a duck in sight. The annual Bramblebank cricket match goes ahead, although a little wetter than usual. Good evening to you. A gun has been held to a woman's head during a terrifying armed robbery at a Pizza Hut in West Sussex. Police think the same men could be behind 7 other similar robberies in the Lancing and Worthing areas in recent weeks.
Last night's robbery at Pizza Hut on North Road follows other raids at takeaways, convenience stores and a betting shop. There have also been a number of street robberies, all in the past 6 weeks.
Well, last night, one of 2 men forced a cashier to open the till at gunpoint before escaping with £1,000 in cash. From Lancing, Charlotte Wilkins reports.
It was 9 o'clock last night when 2 men burst into this Pizza Hut restaurant in Lancing, wielding a gun and terrifying staff. The robbers struck at a particularly quiet time of the night. There weren't any customers in the store, but 7 members of staff were on duty. And one girl in particular was left incredibly shaken and upset by the incident. One man jumped over the till and held a gun to her head and demanded she opened the till, while another man remained on the customer side of the counter. The men got away with £1,000, which they carried in a plastic tub. The armed robbery is strikingly similar to others which have happened in the area in the last 6 weeks. The most recent being at Uncle Sam's burger restaurant, just a short distance away. Police say they could all be linked and have released CCTV images of a man they want to speak to about a robbery at the Spa store at the end of August. They've also released a picture of a witness they'd like to speak to who was in the store at the time. People living in the town say it's a worrying time.
Yeah, horrible. Really awful. They don't have police about, do they? Never see them walking about, do you?
Well, if it's an armed robbery, it's frightening, isn't it?
Police want to hear from anyone who was in the area at the time. Charlotte Wilkins, ITV News, Lancing.
Meanwhile, 5 men have been jailed for a total of 53 years for their part in an armed robbery in Portsmouth. They forced their way into a house where they threatened 2 women and 2 children with a gun. They left the house empty-handed.
A 50-year-old man's appeared in court charged with murdering a woman at a flat in Bournemouth. Hayley Dean, who was 38, was found at Gainsley Court on Derby Road on Friday night. A post-mortem revealed she died from head injuries. James Darcy will now appear at Winchester Crown Court tomorrow.
2 young drivers who were racing each other before one of them lost control and crashed into a lamppost have been spared jail. It happened on the A27 in Worthing back in February. 19-year-old Louis Greco from Littlehampton lost control of his Peugeot 206, seriously injuring himself and 2 passengers. 19-year-old Jake Hedges from Worthing was driving the other car. They both pleaded guilty to causing serious injury by dangerous driving. They've been given a suspended prison sentence and banned from driving for 5 years.
These 2 drivers were clearly racing racing on a highway. They put themselves at massive risk, and that's demonstrated by this crash, as well as any other road users that could have been on the road at the same time. And it just demonstrates how quickly a piece of fun between 2 groups of people can end in almost certain tragedy.
Now, for someone with dementia, finding their way around one of the world's busiest airports is a daunting prospect.
But now 76,000 workers at Heathrow are being trained to help sufferers, making it the first dementia-friendly airport in the world.
Our transport correspondent Mike Pearce has been given exclusive access to one of the training courses.
Trying to navigate an airport the size of Heathrow can certainly be a challenge. For many living with dementia, it's unthinkable.
Getting lost, confusion, all this information everywhere, all this noise, that's the biggest issue here.
Lorraine Brown from Gillingham has Alzheimer's and has to write everything down to jog her memory. She'd love to fly, but the fear of being unable to cope puts her off.
I'd love to travel on my own, but a busy environment with the, you know, with antennas going off and all this would make it a bit difficult for me to understand where am I supposed to go, where am I supposed to be.
What we want to do is aim to increase everybody's understanding of dementia.
Now Heathrow is leading the way in training all frontline staff to become dementia friends. It means those affected can let the airport know and get the help they need. Or if they just need advice, staff will understand and assist them.
Staff here will have had the awareness to be able to maybe spot some of the issues, some of the maybe agitation that people will be feeling, the confusion, forgetting where they've, you know, that their passport was in their handbag, that sort of thing.
Anybody that lives with Alzheimer's or dementia will come through Heathrow and we'll be able to recognise what help they need and how we can help them go through Heathrow Airport. The sheer size of it is frightening for anybody.
So far, 500 have attended special courses. The plan is for all 76,000 staff to follow.
It equips us with the tools on how to deal with the passengers or members of the public.
It's education, so it's raising the awareness, and that's the key thing of this. It's a hidden illness and you don't know what the symptoms are.
You know it's happening, but you want to carry on. You want to not to let it make a difference. And if people are aboard with an awareness, life would be so much easier.
Mike Pearce, ITV News, Heathrow.
A mother pushing her baby son in a pushchair has been attacked and mugged in Aldershot. The 31-year-old was walking along Helimoke Road when her 5-month-old child on Saturday. She was knocked to the ground by a woman who got away with her handbag. She's described as between 30 and 40 with ginger hair.
It's made me a bit unsure now to obviously go out on my own. So now I'll probably for a little while go out with my parents or my brother or someone until I get a bit more confidence going on my own.
A child and his grandmother have been rescued after becoming trapped on the big wheel at Southsea Seafront. They were in a pod near the top of the wheel near Clarence Pier when it stopped working. They were brought down by firefighters using a hydraulic ladder. The Solent wheel, which cost £750,000, opened in March of this year.
Now, it's been a dramatic political summer dominated by leadership contests for the Tories, Labour, UKIP and the Greens.
What about the Liberal Democrats? Well, they are in Brighton for their party conference and our political correspondent Phil Hornby is with them.
Lib Dems from our region at their annual drinks party, dreaming about the future, reminiscing about the past. Not too long ago they had MPs in places like Portsmouth and Lewis, Eastleigh, Christchurch and Winchester. Just 16 months ago they were in government. Then came their general election wipeout. Just 8 MPs left across the country, none in our region. So as they talk in Brighton, is anyone listening?
Well, I think most people, whether they're Liberal Democrat inclined, Conservative inclined or whatever, feel that it's wrong at the moment that we have a Conservative government that is unchallenged. Really bad for Britain, really bad for this part of Britain. And the Liberal Democrats are now stepping into that space vacated by a Labour Party that seems to be obsessed with fighting old battles.
We have been brought back to relevance by the referendum and by the war that's going on within UKIP, within the Labour Party, within the Greens.
But you were on the wrong side in the referendum.
We're still on the side of 48% of people in this country.
But they admit getting their voices heard can be difficult.
It's much more interesting to talk about Farage taking his clothes off in the water than it is about how Liberal Democrats have real plans in complicated situations.
This week's all about getting voters to take notice of them and their policies.
Heathrow, Gatwick, airports expansion, where do you stand on that?
Well, we've been very clear that Heathrow expansion is something we do not support. We will stick to that, and if the Conservatives choose to U-turn, then we will hold them to account.
Grammar schools.
Poor idea.
They're in a city with 3 MPs, 1 Tory, 1 Labour, 1 Green. No Lib Dems. But they say they're happy to be beside the seaside.
Love Brighton, always a marvellous. We've been out for a run this morning along the seafront. Didn't decide to go for a swim. Too many memories of Neil Kinnock.
Oh yes, but at least that got him noticed all those years ago. Do you know which political party's having a conference here this week?
I don't know.
Have you any idea?
No, because we don't live here.
Couldn't tell you.
Really?
I didn't realise there was one. Is there?
Do you know which party's in town?
No, I don't know.
The TUC were here. Are they still here?
Political party holding its conference here this week. Do you know who it is?
Oh dear.
Any idea?
I'm sorry.
Do you know which political party's got its conference going on here at the moment?
Yeah, that one there.
What do you think of them?
What do I think of them? Who are they?
When the conference ends tomorrow evening, they'll be going back to their constituencies to prepare for a lot of hard work. Phil Hornby, ITV News, Brighton.
Yes, you are watching ITV News here in the Meridian region. Thanks for choosing us. Coming up.
Drawing in the crowds and the tide for the annual cricket match on the Solent's Bramble Bank.
And don't forget to look on our website, itv.com/Meridian. Call us please, 0808 1010 095, or get in touch via Facebook or, of course, Twitter.
Now, a mother who blames her son's disabilities on epilepsy drugs she took while pregnant is welcoming new warnings being printed on the pack.
Research has found that babies exposed to the drug in question run a considerable risk of having physical and mental health problems.
Campaigners have spent years calling for more to be done to make women more aware of the dangers, as Peter Byrne explains.
We're hugely proud of this and we're really pleased it's happened.
It may seem a simple thing, some writing on the side of a carton, but to Catherine Cox, it's a major step forward.
We're really pleased that this warning is now finally on the boxes. However, we actively want all doctors to call in their patients, go through the risks of taking valproate in pregnancy with the mothers and make sure they have an informed choice.
Mrs. Cox's son Matthew has learning difficulties. She believes it was caused by sodium valproate. She was taking the drug, marketed as Epilim, when she was pregnant. Valproate was first prescribed in this country in 1973. Parents had concerns about the possible risks during the 80s and 90s. But the first official recognition of those risks only came in 2014. A Europe-wide review found 30 to 40% of babies exposed to the drug had developmental problems. Campaigners say they've also uncovered evidence that when the drug first went on the market, the authorities advised doctors not to alert patients to the dangers.
I think it is a real scandal. 7,000 babies, we estimate, have been affected by this, and for people not to have been warned about the risks involved when it appears as if they were aware of the risks, I think is really concerning.
Despite the risks associated with sodium valproate, the advice to women who are pregnant or who are thinking of having a baby is not to stop taking their medication, as there could be a risk to their unborn child from having a seizure during pregnancy. Instead, they should be talking to their doctor about the alternatives open to them.
The body which regulates medicines in the UK says it's kept the drug under constant review and put out advice accordingly. Meanwhile, the manufacturer, Sanofi, told us patient safety is its primary concern, and it systematically reports any adverse effects seen in children born to mothers treated by its products to the health authorities. Campaigners like Catherine Cox still want the government to express regret for what's happened and provide care plans to support children like Matthew.
When we get the result that we want in the end, then we will say we've got there. Until we've got there, we're still fighting.
That fight should get a further boost later this year with the setting up of a cross-party group of MPs to look at the use of epilepsy drugs in pregnancy. Peter Byrne, ITV News.
In other news, the man brought in to transform the fortunes of Southern Health has himself resigned from the board. Tim Smart was appointed as interim chairman in May following damning criticism of the trust from the Care Quality Commission. His departure for personal reasons follows the resignation of Katrina Percy, who stepped down as chief executive last month.
Freshers in the south are being encouraged to get vaccinated against meningitis. Figures released today show that less than a quarter of 18-year-olds are protected. Students are at greater risk because they mix closely with large groups of new people. There have been more than 200 cases of the aggressive strain of MenW in the last year.
It is just about 16 minutes past 6. The ITV Evening News continues with the national and the international news at 6:30. Let's now get a preview to London and Mary Nightingale.
Coming up, a shootout in New Jersey as police arrest the man wanted after a weekend of terror on America's East Coast. The 28-year-old is of Afghan descent. Shortly before he was detained, more packages were found in a rucksack outside a New Jersey station. Here, a convicted killer is found guilty of murdering Becky Godden 5 years after police blunders had meant he'd evaded justice. And brothers in arms, how Alistair Brownlee put competition aside to support his little brother. Join Mark and me for that and more at 6:30.
Now, many of the country's biggest acting stars began at the National Youth Theatre, and this year it's celebrating its 60th anniversary.
Yes, the NYT is still nurturing acting talent, including two aspiring thespians from Brighton and Bournemouth, as Kevin Ashford will tell us.
You might just be looking at future stars of stage and screen. These youngsters are among the latest members of the National Youth Theatre, which is celebrating its 60th year of nurturing talent. Talent like Lauren Moore from Brighton and Harrison Brodie from Bournemouth.
I think I've got out of it a lot of confidence and more belief in the industry, because drama school is notoriously difficult to get into, and NYT offers a different kind of training and makes you industry ready without necessarily having to go to drama school.
I think I've learned a lot about myself in terms of the idea that it's okay to make mistakes and that it's not necessarily about how good you are or not necessarily about how the big roles you get, but being part of an ensemble is so important.
When it was founded in 1956, the NYT was the world's first youth theatre. These days there are more than 4,500 applicants every year for its courses that cover every aspect of theatre life. The latest production that youngsters have been working on was a special 60th anniversary gala that was performed last night at a West End theatre in London, watched by a host of stars, many of them former NYT students.
It started me off really. It's a wonderful company, it's a wonderful organisation. I think it's a great platform for young people. I think it's a great platform for creativity, and you know, it provides you with a real sense of home and purpose, and it's a wonderful, wonderful company. I'm really proud to be part of it.
There's absolutely no way that I'd be an actor without this organisation. I didn't go to drama school. I joined this organisation very young, at 15. I grew up here. My most formative years were spent with kids who weren't from the same background as me, creating art.
I'm not a beneficiary of it. I'm too old. I wish it had been around when I was a kid. It's an ideal project for any educationalist who really wants to mix up people with talent, not necessarily an academic talent. And so you see it on display here, and it's wonderful.
Despite its record of helping some of the biggest names in acting achieve fame, the National Youth Theatre says it's not a star-making factory, more a place to help young people achieve their dreams, whatever they may be. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Another youthful little thespian now with your sport, Andrew Olivier Pate.
Thank you, Frederick Lovey. Too kind. We are going to start in the Championship tonight because two of our sides had great wins at the weekend. Brighton and Reading are both now just 3 points off an automatic promotion place and looking good. Barnsley were in third place going into this match, but John Swift was too quick for their keeper, and although Gareth McCleary didn't score at first, he made sure on the rebound. Summer signing Swift then scored a stunner, but McCleary pushed off Barnsley's Conor Hourihane and got himself sent off. The home side did pull one back through Adam Armstrong's long-range volley, but Jaap Stam's men held on. This was the first ever league meeting between these sides, and it was the South Coast Albion who won a late penalty when Yuri Skalak went down. 2 minutes from the end, but Toma Hemed kept his cool. This was Southampton's first league win under Claude Puel. For substitute Charlie Austin, it was a case of if at first you don't succeed, then make sure you try, and at last, try again. Saints' first clean sheet since February, ensuring the 3 points. Bournemouth came up against table toppers Manchester City in red-hot form. This was 5 wins out of 5 for Pep Guardiola's side. Many of the Cherries players said this was the best team they've ever faced, and will be glad their next match, tomorrow night, is home to Preston in the EFL Cup. In League Two, Portsmouth were looking for their 5th win in a row, but sadly for a number of the Pompey players it was an unhappy return to Accrington Stanley. Portsmouth have 5 former Accrington players at the club, but it was an Accrington new boy, debutant Paddy Lacey, who stole the headlines. This was Crawley's first win in 5 matches, with James Collins heading home. And in the 93rd minute, Enzio Baldwin finished off a great run in style. Oxford United nearly won this, the first ever competitive match between these sides, but Wes Thomas couldn't find his way past keeper David Martin. Swindon were up against informed Bury and came out second best, Hallam Hope with the first, and then the striker pounced on a Swindon mistake to break forward and leave the home side with little hope. They did grab a consolation through Jonathan Abika, but will need to regroup ahead of Bristol Rovers' visit tomorrow. The Paralympics came to a close last night, the South's athletes wrapping things up this weekend with yet more medals. Paul Blake from Dorchester won silver in the 800 metres to go with the gold he'd won in the 400. Out on the water, it was the final day of sailing, and for some time with the sport not in the 2020 Paralympics. Alexandra Rickham and Nikki Birrell from Bournemouth took home a bronze in the Scud 18, while Helena Lucas from Southampton also had to settle for bronze. The 2012 gold medalist was going in first place into the final race, but a plastic bag wrapped around her rudder led to her finishing 13th on the day in the single-person keelboat. And Simon Munn from Brighton was part of the basketball team who won bronze thanks to an overtime win against Turkey. In ice hockey, it was a mixed weekend for the Basingstoke Bison, beating Bracknell Bees 8-1 before narrowly losing 2-1 to the Peterborough Phantoms. Good names. Finally from me, a cricket match with a difference. The annual Bramble Bank game took place last night and conditions were a little wet, to say the least, as Richard Slee explains.
It is a high watermark of English eccentricity, played at extremely low tide. This is the annual Bramblebank cricket match played in the middle of the Solent.
You'd think they'd want to wear wetsuits rather than cricket whites, but I suppose that's missing the point.
It's just a zany thing to do. It's fun. You're with a bunch of people you enjoy being with, and we're all having a great time, and I think that's what it's all about.
How would you describe the conditions here today?
Well, a little damp, but better than in previous years. We thought the heavy roller would work, but it hasn't quite brought out the character of the pitch.
The match between the Royal Southern Yacht Club in Hamble and the Island Sailing Club in Cowes gets more popular every year.
We had to postpone it in August, and we had to postpone it in August because the weather was so bad. So we're quite pleased that we've got here in September, and the conditions are nigh on perfect.
Well, this is the only cricket match where instead of rain stops play, it's always waves stops play. In the end, the score didn't matter. In the best sporting tradition, it was the taking part that counts. Richard Slee, ITV News, on the Bramblebank in the Solent.
And that is your slightly surreal sport for today.
Thank you. Love it.
Thank you.
Now, the 7th annual Reading Retail Awards have taken place, honouring the town's best restaurants and shops.
Indeed, the event was presented by our very own Sangeeta Barbara. Good evening, Sangeeta, I know you're watching. Other guests included Reading East MP Rob Wilson and Sir John Medeski. The overall winner of Retailer of the Year was Waring's, the Master Bakery.
You know, when there's so much fuss made of the internet, these are the people that actually give service to customers and pursuit of excellence, and I think it's such a great idea.
Now here's some more award winners with Simon.
Well, kind of, almost award winners.
Yes.
At this time of the year we seem to look at very large plants in gardens.
Yes.
And you always ask the question, well, how do they know?
How do they know?
Everybody has come up with the answer. So have a look at this first picture here of a very large sunflower that Carol Longman in East Preston near Littlehampton has grown. She says, I'm 5'5".
Yes.
Then you got the length of my arm.
Yes.
Okay, that's that there. And then she's holding a 1 metre stick. And it does not reach the top of the leaves of the sunflower. So we'll never know quite how big that sunflower is, but it's pretty tall. 16'9", I'm thinking. Tony Wiggins in Worthing says he can't compete with the tall sunflowers, but he's got a very wide one, which is a whopping 9 inches. Look at that one. And Brenda Dodds in Ferndown says, you may have the biggest and the tallest sunflower, is this the smallest and the shortest? So that's the full length of it, which is 44 inches, which is 3'8" high, and across it's 3.5 inches. So yeah, we'll put that down as the smallest. Another big one here, and well, no, actually, not really that big. It just happens to be growing out of a hanging basket, look. John was a bit surprised that it just turned up in Swindon. And finally from Roy in Basingstoke, 3 of them that together he thinks looks like an OMG face. So the new strand is sunflowers that look like emojis. Meridian weather at itv.com if you can help.
And talking of the weather, here he is with your forecast, Simon Parkin.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Now, I don't know if you happened to notice the moon over the weekend, very low and very bright. It was a harvest moon, so named because it's the last full moon before the autumnal equinox, which happens on Thursday. And there's been an autumnal feel to the weather today. The good news is the jet stream, our old friend the jet stream, is staying to the north and west of us. And down towards the south, we've got high pressure, and that means nothing too bad is going to happen this week. That said, at times there'll be nothing too great either, like tonight. Weak weather front passing south and eastwards, a lot of cloud, some outbreaks of rain. Initially some quite perky ones, but turning light and patchy through the second half of the night. Temperatures, well, fairly mild, 12, 13 degrees, and some patchy mist here and there too. Now, tomorrow morning, it's towards the west. You might see some early brightness, bit of cloud in the east, and also some light drizzly rain, turning largely dry, more in the way of sunny spells come the afternoon, but that could in turn spark off an odd shower. And the temperatures tomorrow, well, peaking at around 17, 18 degrees, about right for the time of year. As for your high tide times, in Portsmouth, 2:05 in the morning, 2:15 in the afternoon.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Now in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Stacey's got our late news, so do join her if you possibly can. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you very much indeed for watching. Take care and join us again soon. Till then, from us all,
good night.
Bye-bye. Bye.